There was a businessman who was tired of the modern world and was seeking a simpler life. Entering the monastery, he saw monks in simple robes practicing their meditations and tending to the grounds. Ah, he thought, here is a life free from distraction. But walking into the study halls, he discovered monks staring into laptops. In the wings, he saw monks typing on iPads. Shaken by this intrusion of the outside world into monastic life, he sought out the abbot. The abbot looked up from his phone, greeted the man, and asked if he had a question. "Abbot," the man inquired, "I came here expecting a place free from distraction, and yet I see distraction all around. Tell me, is it now acceptable for monks to spend their time answering emails?" "Of course," replied the abbot, "provided there are no attachments." "Martha, Martha, you are worried and you are distracted by many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one." These words of Jesus directed toward Martha, the sister of Mary, have been typically interpreted as being critical of Martha's decision to be about her busy work of hospitality and service. To make matters worse, and anyone who's ever tried to compare one sibling to another understands how dangerous this can be, Jesus goes even further to contrast her apparently poor choice with her sister Mary's more exemplary one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. On the surface, it's not the most diplomatic thing Jesus ever said. It's probably on the top 5 list of things I wish Jesus had never said, because it creates this really difficult mess to try to clean up as an interpreter. Really, I and many others would have far preferred had Jesus just stopped with the worried and distracted bit and not gone any further. There's nothing quite as bad as stirring up sibling rivalries. There's a lot to be said that this short account ends with this statement of Jesus, which means that we don't know if Jesus nearly escaped with his life, if Martha just stopped talking to him and or her sister, or really if Martha and Mary ever even spoke to each other again. At least in John's gospel, we see them communicating with Jesus after their brother Lazarus dies. But here in Luke, if we just go with this one text where they're in the scene, in Luke it's kind of a cliffhanger and it isn't encouraging. But in an act of imagination, I'd like to presume that Martha took Jesus's apparent correction well, that it did not impact her relationship with her sister permanently or even long term, and that maybe whatever point Jesus was making made a difference somehow. Ultimately, I choose to understand this as not being about one sister's diligence about her work over another's capacity to sit and listen to Jesus, and more rather about distraction and focus. Luke sets this up as even before Jesus says anything to Martha about being distracted by many things, the text itself, Luke himself, discloses Martha's state of mind and says in there, Martha was distracted by her many tasks. I struggle, as I think most do, with perceiving just Martha's preparations as being somehow incorrect or ill-advised. For one thing, in this very chapter, Luke chapter 10, readers would just have encountered the story of the Good Samaritan. It's in the same text. It's actually right before it. And that's all about taking right action and putting one's faith into motion. Second, anyone in the ancient Mediterranean world would have commended Martha's work and recognized it, that that's what you do when you have a guest in your home. It's a positive thing, something to be praised, even routinely expected. It's just what people did. There would have been no one who, on the basis of the nature of what Mary was doing, or Martha was doing rather, would have given her a low grade. She was doing what was appropriate and would have been presumed would take place to accommodate any traveling visitor. So it seems to be the issue of distraction that's at the root of Jesus' response to Martha's request that Jesus intervene and prompt her sister Mary to help her, get after her. My sister should be helping me. It's a particular distraction that commentator Jennifer Wyatt believes is behind Jesus' words. Wyatt notes that the problem wasn't that Martha was serving, which is worse than sitting at Jesus' feet somehow. The problem was that she was distracted by the wrong things. She became focused on the fact that her sister wasn't helping. Martha is focused on the actions of others and their perceived shortcomings, as opposed to focusing on her own relationship with Jesus. It is this misorientation, not her service or her hospitality, that leads to Jesus' gentle rebuke. Maybe Luke is presenting the idea that we can do right and good things, but still be distracted by the wrong things. We can focus more on the perceived shortcomings of those around us than on our own relationship with Jesus. Wyatt also recalls that there was a well-known legendary tale circulated during the Middle Ages about Martha and Mary. As Wyatt recounts, in this story, which takes place after the resurrection of Jesus, Martha becomes a traveling preacher and ends up in a small town in France that unfortunately has a chronic dragon problem. She manages to slay the dragon, and in doing so wins the whole town over to Christianity. In that same story, her sister Mary, on that same trip, ends up starting a monastery in the wilderness, meaning that they both live out the roles assigned to them in Christian history. Martha acts and Mary studies. Martha represents an active faith, while Mary represents a contemplative faith. While not necessarily historical, this story encourages me in its implication that there remains room in our Christian tradition for more than one form of engaging one's faith, that both active service and thoughtful contemplation can be equally vital for a healthy relationship with Jesus. Wyatt writes, in Luke, disciples both serve and listen to the word, just as disciples today navigate both the contemplative and active practices of faith. Sometimes we slay dragons, and sometimes we start monasteries. But Luke's deeper concern is that our orientation be in the right place, that we focus on Jesus and let the main thing be the main thing. I don't disagree with Wyatt at all. I do, though, want to take a step further, just a step further, because I think that the text invites us to ask even more, particularly of Martha's state of mind here. I wonder if Jesus is also sensing something about Martha beyond just general grumpiness that her sister Mary is not helping her. We get the grumpiness part at something like that, but maybe there's something more here. Martha has typically been considered a gifted and capable host, and this seems to be her calling, and it's evident in her aptitude for getting things ready and for serving others. People would not leave her home without feeling incredibly welcomed. But what if Jesus sees in Martha something deeper, maybe of what we would call today burnout, weariness, that leads her to not be content with fulfilling what had been her calling and what everybody else around said was her calling? There's an account given by United Methodist Bishop Will Willimon, who was visiting, and he was joining a local church in his particular area to do their regular feeding of the homeless in a soup kitchen. Willimon saw this man very diligently washing dishes and cheerfully approached the man, asking him how long he'd done that. I've been doing this for 25 years, the man replied. Willimon then remarked in awe, oh, you must really enjoy what you're doing. I hate it, he quickly answered, but God put me here. This can go in all kinds of directions, but that story that I just heard recently, it just sort of stuck with me. You can read many things in this, but if washing dishes at a soup kitchen was once this man's calling, it wasn't anymore, not in the same way. It was good that he could affirm God's hand in putting him there, but I struggle with the feeling that it was not something that gave him joy or satisfaction at that moment. Again, good that he was doing that, good that anybody was doing that. But I want to think just a moment about the passion aspect. Again, there are many directions here, but I wonder if there is any way for him to recover a presumably lost passion that he once had. The late theologian and civil rights activist, the Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, wrote and preached about people of faith finding and claiming what made them come alive. It was when they discovered what made them come alive and lived out of that sense of purpose and invigoration that they were truly acting out of a sense of their own most authentic calling. For Thurman, and I wonder if the same can be said of Jesus, passion and enthusiasm are necessary ingredients for whatever it is that we do in being people of faith. Maybe it's not enough to do what we're good at doing, as great as that is. Maybe it's not sufficient to just do what we did 25 years ago and still do because it's where we got stuck somehow. Maybe there is a better way or a better part to choose. I wonder if Jesus is encouraging that Martha needed to do some examination of her original calling. I know this is a stretch here. My imagination is going wild here. Is the hospitality and service she was trying to accomplish still bringing her peace, fulfillment, making her come alive? Or was she just going through the motions and feeling overwhelmed because the desire to do it all didn't seem to burn as intensely inside of her as it once did? Make no mistake, people can and do recover passion, but it takes intentionality and conscious reflection. It takes people really concentrating. It takes a great deal of willingness to dig deep and listen to one's soul. And maybe in the end, Martha might have found that she had a different, a newer calling, and that she needed to pursue that at that point in her life. Unfortunately, we won't know this. This is all speculation. But I like to imagine her slaying dragons in France as some kind of way of knowing what happened to Martha, as the founding of monasteries explains what could have come of Mary's inclination toward contemplative spirituality. Maybe we are Mary, comfortable in where God has put us, doing what we feel uniquely called to do to bless our Lord's work in the world. Or maybe we're Martha, skilled and gifted and capable and experienced in what we've done for some time. But there's just that something, that little something nagging at us that requires us to ask questions of our choices. Maybe we need to fix our focus somehow. And Jesus offers us the chance to do just that. If our focus is on Jesus, then our hearts and our passions will align with that focus. There are any number of things that we might do that Jesus would bless us in doing, but our focus must be on that. Our spirits and motives must support the actions we take and the choices that we make. I pray that whatever place we are, that we're not only doing what we feel called to do there, but that we're passionate and committed and focused and on fire as we do them. That, in the end, might be the better part. Amen.